Okay, so will Disneyland bring back a Halloween party to Disneyland Park? As we know right now, Oogie Boogie Bash is the only Disneyland Resort Halloween party, and that takes place at Disney California Adventure. But is there a chance that we'll see a Halloween party happen at Disneyland Park, maybe in 2026 or sometime shortly after that? I'm gonna get into that, as well as could other attractions return to Disneyland should they do this, including maybe, I don't know, Space Mountain Ghost Galaxy. Let's get into it. If you're not familiar, I'm David Vaughn, your buddy who's obsessed with Disneyland, and I'm really excited to talk about this today because every single time I post about Oogie Boogie Bash coming back, I notice that more and more comments every single year kind of demand that Disneyland Park is the one that hosts the party in the future, and there's probably several reasons for why that would be. So let's talk about a little bit about where Oogie Boogie Bash came from and why it's no longer at Disneyland Park. Well, why the Halloween party is no longer at Disneyland Park. So back in 2019, Disneyland announced that a new Halloween party would be coming to Disney California Adventure called Oogie Boogie Bash. This was a new version, a completely redone version of what we saw at Disneyland Park, and this one would have a Nightmare Before Christmas sort of theme, with Oogie Boogie being the villain of that movie as well as the main villain of this event. And he basically invites a bunch of villains in to host their own treat trails and kind of heckle guests as they came through. And he also shows up every single year. And Oogie Boogie Bash is a lot of fun because not only do you get sort of elevated treat trail experiences seeing rare villains, but also you get a little bit of interactivity with that. They can also sell alcohol during the event, which they did not do before at Disneyland Park. So a lot of folks really liked that perk of it. And then in addition, getting a whole new atmosphere and scenery for this after hours party. And it solved a big thing for Disneyland Park. As we saw before Galaxy's Edge opened in 2019, crowds were expected to be pretty crazy at Disneyland, and it was just getting so popular, especially around the Halloween season, year after year. So when they had the previous version of the party, which was called Mickey's Halloween Party, a lot of people thought it was called Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party, but actually there never was a Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party at Disneyland Park. That was always just for Walt Disney World. At Disneyland Park, it was just called Mickey's Halloween Party, just for some clarity there. But anyway, Disneyland Park had one with projections, lighting, special entertainment like the Halloween Screens fireworks. There was also the Frightfully Fun Parade. There was also Space Mountain Ghost Galaxy, which was also available during the day. But all of these special attractions were specifically designed to be experienced during this event as well, which kind of add a little bit of extra entertainment and incentive for going to Mickey's Halloween Party for daytime guests. And as we saw Disneyland just get so crazy popular, it was only a matter of time. We kind of knew it. I remember talking about this in, like, I think 2017, being like, it's probably gonna get moved over to Disney California Adventure just because it's just so much demand for people to be in the park, and closing Disneyland early for a Halloween party. Let's just say you're coming in from out of state and you want to experience Disneyland during the Halloween season, and now you're noticing that the park's closing at like 6 or 7 p.m. That kind of put a damper on things, especially if you went on like a weekend night, like a Sunday night or something like that. A lot of people just were not in super big favor of that. So now seeing the Halloween season was just getting so busy at Disneyland, it made sense when they moved it over to Disney California Adventure. And also for folks who don't come very often and don't get to experience the Halloween season at Disneyland, I can understand the setting of Disneyland is a lot better, in my opinion, for a Halloween party. It just looks so good at night. And even though Disney California Adventure does a really good job, it does take a back seat to Disneyland's Halloween decorations. But what Disneyland did, which I thought was really, really smart, was that they split up the entertainment. So what they did was they kept the Halloween Screams fireworks in the show, and they put it as part of regular park hours at Disneyland Park. So you don't have to have a special ticket to experience the Halloween Screams fireworks. You don't need to go for Oogie Boogie Bash, or you don't need to go for Mickey's Halloween Party. You can just see it as part of your regular park ticket. And that's a pretty big perk, in my opinion, to be able to go and experience that and not have a special ticket for it. You just go as a regular daytime guest. In addition, we did see the Frightfully Fun Parade get moved over to Oogie Boogie Bash. So we saw that parade. It might be Disneyland's best parade, or at least one of them that they've done. And this one looks great at Disney California Adventure. I think they do a really good job with it, but again, nothing really quite beats Disneyland. I think the backdrop, the castle, Main Street, having a parade go down it, it really makes sense. Now, with that said, there are some reasons why we could possibly see Disney California Adventure not being able to host this type of event. And the big reason for that is that there's a lot of construction going on at the park. There's actually going to be 3 big areas of the park that are going under construction. The first one is going to be in Hollywoodland. So right where Monsters Inc. is, they're going to pretty much demolish all of that to build a new Avatar land. And that will come several years in the future, but construction is supposed to begin in 2026, with early 2026 being the closing of Monsters Inc. So once all of that starts to go under demo, now a lot of people think all of Hollywoodland's going away. It's not going to be all of Hollywoodland. It's just going to be the part behind, sort of like Schmoozies, Award Wieners, like that area over there is going to be gone. But it looks like Mickey's Philhar Magic Theater, that should be able to stay. We just will have the other part where Monsters Inc. get absorbed into the Avatar experience. So all of that's going to be under construction, which I guess wouldn't totally impact it. However, that's where one of the stages is that they keep the villains. So it's going to have some type of impact. In fact, this year they had 2 villains over there. They had Hades as well as Judge Doom. So 2 villains areas kind of off limits is quite a bit. And then going over to behind Avengers Campus, there's a lot of construction going on over there, and they had to close down the trolley. And that is actually a spot where they run a lot of the parade route. So what we're seeing is, because that's kind of the behind the scenes, it goes from, you're going to see it go from Pixar Pier all the way to Hollywoodland, and then loop around, and that's typically where we saw the parade going. But the parade float holding area is actually where the Coco ride is supposed to go. So that's behind the Incredicoaster, and then the whole loop that goes behind Avengers Campus is supposed to get disrupted. So with all of that seemingly part of something that could be under construction, we're seeing a big part of the parade route go away. So will they even be able to house a parade? That's the big question. There's no parade buildings if a Coco ride's going in there, and they have to demolish those. And construction for that is supposed to begin at the end of 2025. So we might see that they won't even be able to host a parade float after, I don't know, maybe the Halloween season concludes in the last day of Oogie Boogie Bash, which is October 31st. So that could be a huge impact, with the Coco ride going behind Incredicoaster, as well as Avengers rides being under construction behind Avengers Campus. So that might be another big issue. If you can't have a parade, then you need another piece of special entertainment. Now, of course, they could bring back the World of Color show that they had that was Halloween themed, but is that enough to bring people in? A lot of folks didn't really love the first year's version that they had in Oogie Boogie Bash with a World of Color, but I think a big reason for that was just it was really hard to see everything, including World of Color, in one night, with the party, with the parade, with World of Color, with all the villains' treat trails, and then if you wanted to ride in the attractions, it just kind of became a little disruptive. Also, having a lot of people pooling around a World of Color and then also needing to run the parade, I think operationally might have been a little difficult. I'm not entirely sure why they didn't bring back World of Color, but they only had it that first year, and it was like a special one with this character. It's kind of like a Tim Burton-y type character, so I don't know what happened with all that, but we haven't seen that pop back up again. And then also we have Guardians of the Galaxy Monsters After Dark, which starts at 3 p.m. when the early mix-in comes in for Oogie Boogie Bash. That is a daytime experience, but you can kind of tell based on the fact that it starts at 3 p.m. that it was specifically designed for an Oogie Boogie Bash attraction to have a little extra attraction like we had with Space Mountain Ghost Galaxy at Disneyland Park. So knowing the fact that there is a scarier version of that ride specifically designed for Disney California Adventure, then that bears the question, like, does Disneyland bring back Space Mountain Ghost Galaxy if they move the party over to Disneyland? So now we know that they might have some limitations at Disney California Adventure, at least for the next few years as they continue construction, and then also a growing demand of people who want the party back at Disneyland. But we're still faced with the fact that Disneyland has been so popular over the past recent years, especially in October, for people going to the parks. So the big issue with bringing a special event to a park like that is that you have to close it early. So think about this: when we see a Disneyland After Dark event, which typically happens with Sweethearts Night in January and February, and then we have Star Wars Night, which is usually like April, May. We have some other special times that might happen in the spring, and those close the parks early around like 8 p.m. That limits how many people go, and that can also cannibalize tickets. So let's just say they might be selling, tens of thousands for that after hours party, but then maybe people see there's limited hours that day and then they just decide not to go that day. So you're losing some ticket sales and gaining them in other ways. So it doesn't quite balance out maybe in the way that you're thinking. However, we're seeing that happen in a big way right now at Disney California Adventure, at least from what it seems. Obviously, I don't have the numbers, but I am seeing that on Oogie Boogie Bash dates, a lot fewer people are choosing to go to Disney California Adventure on those days. So maybe there needs to be a little bit of a restructuring to get more people into Disney California Adventure, especially if there's going to be construction going on. You don't want years and years of people saying, hey, DCA's not where it's at because of construction, and then also early park closures due to Oogie Boogie Bash special event. So if Disneyland wanted to move the party back to Disneyland Park, maybe that would be a good way to do it. Now, we are seeing Oogie Boogie Bash sell out, albeit not as fast as it used to, but they're also far more dates than ever. So will that mean that maybe we're gonna have two parties? One Oogie Boogie Bash and then Mickey's Halloween party at Disneyland? Is that possible? Would they have two if there's just so much demand right now? Or would everybody who was going to Oogie Boogie Bash just prefer to go to Disneyland Park? Or will they run fewer Oogie Boogie Bash dates and more Disneyland Park dates? Who knows? I don't really think that they would do two and close the parks early or rotate close the parks early. But there is one important thing that I'm seeing, and I am seeing less demand in October. And I think that we're overall seeing that because, well, there's many different reasons. First, we have a perceived economy. If people just feel like traveling right now is not in their wheel book, maybe they're just working on saving, maybe they already did all their traveling, maybe right now they've already done Disneyland in October and they've seen it before a few times and they just don't need to do it again. If they're seeing less ticket sales being sold, which I can't totally confirm, but based on some of the things we're seeing, special deals coming out, people were emailed specific offers saying, hey, come to the parks. This is at a steep discount too, mind you. So I think we are seeing some signs that Disneyland is doing special offers, and they have also come out and said before that they would offer special discounts should they see any slowed ticket sales. So as we see all of that emerge, maybe Disneyland is looking at the tea leaves and saying, hey, we know that for years and years, October has been such a big time to go to Disneyland, especially the past 10 years, but maybe that's slowing down. Maybe people's travel is changing. Maybe people are preferring to go earlier in the year. The holiday season is still the peak season for sure. Maybe Halloween is like second peak season. Maybe it's not as busy as that time. So we want to fill in some of those lost ticket sales, that lost revenue. If they're not hitting the marks they've been hitting in previous years, then they have to get a bit innovative and look at future trends and say, hey, we can't really be offering the same thing over and over again. And I think that's the big thing. I think that if Disneyland rolled out maybe a new fireworks show, maybe some new parade floats for the Frightfully Fun parade, maybe some new characters that we can meet, because Oogie Boogie Bash does sell out. So even if people have criticisms about how they haven't changed that party up enough, it still sells out. And for many dates, they did increase ticket prices. Not all dates, but many dates they did increase ticket prices. So if people's criticism is that they just need to mix up the after hours party, I don't think that that's necessarily the case. I think the demand is definitely there for that. But in terms of daytime tickets, maybe they need to pump in a little bit more incentive there. So maybe that means bringing back what a lot of people have been demanding, which is Space Mountain Ghost Galaxy. If you're not familiar, Space Mountain Ghost Galaxy was a Halloween overlay of the attraction, which ran its last day in 2018. And the attraction had a creepy-ish ghost that would follow the train around as you went through, and kind of scary music. And they had a little warning on the front of it like they do with Guardians Monsters After Dark, saying, hey, this might be scarier than regular Space Mountain, so just heads up if you have kids going with you. But one thing I'll say is, over the years, Space Mountain Ghost Galaxy for sure lost a lot of its pizzazz. At first it was so cool, and then as the years went on, it looked dated and it looked like it needed some updating. So maybe, and this is what I'll say, if Disneyland brings back Ghost Galaxy or another type of scary overlay for Space Mountain, the one thing that I would like to see for sure is making it so that attraction was updated, and that the projections looked a lot better, and it just didn't look as flat. And I think the score was good. They could keep some of the music, but just the effects and the projections and things like that they turned on for that attraction, I think that they would need to update that. And I can't confirm this as well, but I have heard that it was mostly removed from the attraction anyway, so it's not currently there to even be able to turn on, so they would need to re-add it to the attraction. But listen, if they brought back Paint the Night, they can bring back Space Mountain Ghost Galaxy. And then also for everybody who never got to ride Space Mountain Ghost Galaxy and have heard about it, then they get to see it. If they don't update those projections though, you'll probably see a lot of disappointed people saying, that was it? That's what everybody's been raving about? But again, if they brought back Paint the Night, it's very possible that we'll see some reworkings of Space Mountain Ghost Galaxy, especially as Disneyland looks at their comment sections and people messaging them saying, hey, these are some of the attractions we'd like to see back. And then as they don't deliver those and they're seeing not enough people coming through to the parks as much as they'd like to, then all I gotta do is kind of revamp something. So maybe Imagineering is working on something like that currently. It's hard to know. Like again, Oogie Boogie Bash, even though it's not selling as quickly as it used to, is a huge success. They added more dates than ever. I think it was like 30 or 31 dates this year that started even before the Halloween season. We saw Oogie Boogie Bash dates on August 17th, with the Halloween season beginning about a week later. So pretty crazy to see that happening. Another downside though, for maybe some folks going to Disneyland, if they do bring a party back there, is that there is no alcohol being served at Disneyland Park. Well, you can get it at the table service restaurants and Oga's Cantina, but you can't get a drink and just walk around the park like you can at Disney California Adventure. Granted, I don't see that happening a ton during Oogie Boogie Bash. Maybe it's happening more in later in months, maybe closer to the Halloween season, and I usually go earlier in the season. Now, another thing to think about though, is if they bring Oogie Boogie Bash to Disneyland, they will have to bring villains. So I don't know if they'll do an Oogie Boogie Bash, or if they'll call it a new party, or if they'll call it Mickey's Halloween Party again, or whatever they have you. But regardless, they will need to bring in villains, because that was a huge pull for Oogie Boogie Bash. Now, I can't think of too many venues where they currently have something set up. A lot of them are kind of just pop-up stages like we see in for Yokai and San Francisco, and also Sid's stage is kind of a little pop-up stage that they do there to kind of flip things around. Well, now it's not Sid anymore, it's now Syndrome, but either way, they do a lot of these little pop-up ones. But Oogie Boogie has a pretty cool immersive stage there with, like, you know, you got the surrounding screens and everything inside the animation building to kind of make it really immersive and cool looking. And then also Dr. Doofenshmirtz has his own, which they use that theater for. So there's really not a lot of spaces in Disneyland Park where they can do something technically that cool. So maybe they would either need to build something, or maybe, hey, maybe there's something I'm not thinking of that they could sort of implement that. But they could use the Fantasyland Theater for a villain trail for sure, and maybe that will have a little bit extra something, but it won't quite match what we see in those two spaces. But maybe that won't matter. If we see it at Disneyland Park, people would rather have it there than have some of those immersive things. But regardless, it can't feel like a step down. That's something that I'll have to say. But might also be cool to have, hey, you guys can now see fireworks at Disneyland during the event. And that might be a huge pull for a lot of folks too, saying, oh, cool, we saw the Halloween Screams fireworks. Or what I would like to see is an updated version of that show, like a new Halloween fireworks spectacular to fit the season. And that would be really cool, something to see during the week as well. Maybe they can create something specifically designed for this party like they did with Mickey's Halloween Party in the past. But here's the thing, either way, as much as I would like to say, who knows, it kind of seems very possible that even if we don't have a permanent party at Disneyland, maybe it's something that they do in the meantime over the next few years while construction's going on at Disney California Adventure, and they do bring an after hours party during the Halloween season to Disneyland Park. We know they're widely successful, and even though it could maybe potentially cannibalize some ticket sales during the day, we are seeing it being kind of a slower season, especially in September. So maybe this will even out a lot of the things, getting a lot more folks into the parks in late August, all of September and October, buying extra tickets to go to Disneyland. And even if they close the park early, Disney California Adventure maybe could stay open late. Maybe they can offer some special attractions over there. We already have Cars Land, looks really great at night during Halloween If they keep the Guardians overlay Monsters After Dark on Guardians of the Galaxy, that'd be a really fun thing to do. Maybe they can add some Halloween characters over there at night that kind of come out. So there's lots of stuff that they could do for Disney California Adventure to sort of pull people over there, but we'll kind of have to wait and see what happens with that parade route possibly being unavailable. I could see Disneyland needing to move the party back to Disneyland Park. I mean, otherwise they're going to have to offer something else or figure out a new way to get that parade back and forth through that route. Maybe it's possible that they do something like that, but if there are any updates for Disneyland in 2026 for the Halloween season and more, I will keep you updated. But I want to know, would you like to see Disneyland have the party, or do you like it at Disney California Adventure? Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts are. And if anything does change for the Halloween season, I will keep you posted, so make sure you hit the subscribe button. I'm David Vaughn. I really appreciate you watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. It does help me out. And I'll see you next time.